Mr. Gopal. He is the founder chairman of TVS Capital Funds. It's managing assets like over about 1,100 crores. It has been one of the evolving largest domestic rupee-based domestic capital funds. Gopal was also the chairman of CII National Committee. He continues to play an active role in terms of policy making. You would see him like in any place where entrepreneurial activity is happening. He is a kind of very involved member in TIE. He founded TVS Electronics. More than all these things, like he has been a great well-wisher of us, and that's what brings us kind of very close to him. We know him for many years, and he has been one staunch supporter of us. One individual to whom we are so much committed and indebted. Like in a way, like he has given us lots of courage, hope, kind of continuous guidance, and that's no good match. And that's something like which is like we are grateful to him. And with this, I don't think I would have to say anything more than this. I would invite him to have a few words, and he could share the TVS experience of next generations, how they get molded, and how as next generation family business member he got molded in, and how the business itself has been going beyond 100 years and going stronger. Mr. Gopal.
Bala, for those kind words, and thank you Suresh, Bala and everybody else at Metis who I am very fond of for having me here. And it's great to see Professor Ramachandran, or Ram as I call him affectionately, here. In many ways, I think if there is a advisor of advisors, it's Ram in terms of understanding family business, both from a passion of, I think he's extremely strong believer in family business, and equally I think from a point of view of intellectual rigor. So it really brings academic rigor with passion. So I'm so glad you took the time, Ram, and to come and spend time in this area. I am completely a fan of family business, and I'm completely a fan for a couple of reasons. One is, obviously I come from a family business, so I feel good about it. I always felt extremely happy to be part of TVS family. It's one of those things that even in my most saddest or down moments, I always feel good about. I feel good about being an Indian, regardless of what happens. So these are some things I cherish, and it gives me some strength of confidence and faith at a tough time. So in India, as you all know, and I'm sure you've been reading Prime Minister Modi's talks, and we're very fortunate to have a Prime Minister like him with a strong majority. I think this is the best thing that's happened to India since Mr. Vajpayee became Prime Minister. I think you really see this whole focus on job creation. All of you are young, reasonably compared to some of us. All of you have fantastic futures, and yet all of you for the last 10 years have been hearing negative things. With one stroke of the ballot button, Indians have fixed that problem by bringing in a capable leader with a strong majority. So we have nothing to worry about at the top, we have everything to worry about what we do. And one thing Modi keeps talking about is jobs, right? Jobs, jobs, jobs. In the last 20 years, the total number of corporate sector and public sector jobs, and by corporate sector I mean a private limited company and above, have been total addition, and this is I hope this number is right, it's printed in the government economic survey, so I'm just taking it at face value, is 2.1 million. Now write that down, 2.1 million new jobs in 20 years in this $1 trillion market cap, market economy and government babu economy. 2.1 million, that's it, additional jobs. Okay, some people replace retired folks. But is that significant? 2.1 million. There are 24 million young men and women joining the economy every year, and only 2.1 million, which is 100,000 jobs a year. Scary, but actually it's true. Because small business, which is proprietary businesses, partnerships, and own account employment with less than 10 people, people employing people, have actually account for the balance along with agriculture, 462 million jobs. So I just think when you're coming in, people in family business are the only people, along with other entrepreneurs, who can actually sort out this job creation issue in India. So at a very deep level, I know I'm sounding more like a public policy guy, I believe that family business has the solution to bring young Indians into the economy. So I want all of you to think that you have a bigger purpose than your company, a bigger purpose than your family, a bigger purpose in your community, and that is to create economically viable, sustainable, value-adding jobs in the corporate sector. Whenever you have time, go look up this number. It's a fascinating number. And this is something that's been on my mind for that last 2 years. Yesterday when I was talking to the SEBI member and executive director, I said, just like you have Saraswati Puja when you go to school before you start your learning, there should be a jobs puja. A shloka should be said, we are here to create jobs in SEBI every morning. Because that really is the biggest single need this country has. Corporate jobs where people can come to work, believe they have a career, can grow up, be stable, invest in their families with housing and education, and feel comfortable that there is a future for them. So I kind of see you guys as a group that's doing the most important activity for India, which is creating an economic platform on which there will be sustainable jobs. So I will just get off my favorite subject of job creation, because when in the TVS Capital, when we've invested, we've created 32,000 jobs in our first fund. And when we think we've created 32,000 jobs, I feel good. I feel even better when we make great returns on it, of course, but this also makes me feel good. I'll just quickly, this is one thing that fascinates me. I know Ram has seen this slide, and I actually use this for when he invited me to speak to his class. I don't think any other country has 22 definitions of relatives. And this is in law, it's enshrined. And Aarti will tell me whether it's Old Companies Act or New Companies Act, I don't know that, but let's assume it doesn't matter. And fundamentally, this is how important family is in this country. So you are not a family business. All of you are business families, right? You are business folks who happen to be in a family. Business first, family next. And that's how I think about it. So just think about how important it is, right? I mean, some lawmakers spend so much of time figuring out 22 people. I just yesterday saw an A3 matrix giving gift relationships. Suppose you had 8 brothers or sisters, their children, their children's children, and they want to gift shares among themselves without paying tax, right? Look at that matrix. I don't know any other country it's this complicated. Maybe it is, but it tells us how important families are. It's so much part of India, and therefore I always look at this to remind myself that family business is the core of this country, and it should remain the core of this country if this country is going to really become economically free. No other group or community can make the country economically free. So you guys have a huge mission beyond yourself, beyond your company, beyond your family, beyond your community, beyond your city, and that is to really build this country. That's how much faith has been put in all of us as family business folks. Quickly, a little bit about TVS. We are, as you know, largely in the automotive component space. The important thing is we've been in business now for 102 years, and this is year 103. And we've actually pretty much stayed together for 103 years. All the companies that we own together. There are no split ownerships in the group. So it's a very remarkable institution from that point of view. Things that make TVS, I think, very successful. These are all the businesses. Let me just get to in my mind what I wanted to share. TVS, as you know, and to all of you probably epitomizes trust, right? And one of the things that I keep wondering about is how in 103 years without a written constitution, there is some written constitution but not very detailed, we are able to maintain that trust as a core value in every single behavior that we do. The other thing is, obviously, it's very much guided by values. It's consistent in its values. Very, very clear that ethics are important. Maintaining a very low profile in terms of how you live and how you conduct your personal life is very important. Being fair to every shareholder is important. Nothing different from any good business, but it's somehow sustained for 102 or 103 years. Generally very systematic in its management. The maximum number of awards for anything, whether it's a customer award, a quality award, the highest quality award, the maintenance award, you will generally find in TVS, because it really believes that at the core is a very systematic approach to management. You will find that in generally 90-95%, because when you have such a large group of companies with such diverse fourth generation, today we have 68 people in the family business holding shares. We have 28 people operating the family business, and we are actually right now in Gen 5 entering the business. Gen 4 is fully in the business, and when we had to actually attract people to come back into the business in the 80s and 90s, the family undertook a major exercise of going to all our young family men and women who are now working in McKinsey, Microsoft, Bank of America and Oracle, and actually we had to do what I would call as a grand seduction to actually over 5-6 years, using all the tools other than emotional blackmail, which families are of course extremely good at, but using all the other rational tools also to slowly get them back. And the good news is today all of them are back practically, giving away fantastic jobs that have made great careers for them without having their uncle asking them in the board meeting, so why is ROC pretty low this quarter? So despite that, they've been able to come back, and the reason is I think the company is managed very systematically. So I always think of TVS as not a family of businessmen, but as a family of managers. The ethic of the group is actually not a promoter mindset, but actually even up to Gen 4, a manager mindset. When you meet somebody from TVS, they will take pride in who our customers are, how much the customers care for us, how we engage all our employees, what kind of awards we get. So the culture of the group is a culture of being managers first. It's absolutely not about external power. There are exceptions, but largely about how well the company is managed. So that's why I put that as a very core pillar of how TVS got built. And we love being leaders in what we do. We just love that. The price we paid for that is we didn't enter telecom, didn't enter infrastructure, didn't enter real estate, didn't enter many other businesses that we probably were very tempted to enter, but didn't. That was the price we paid. So we're still growing only at 12, 14%, 15% a year. But the advantage we got is when I joined the family business roughly 30 years ago in 1984, we had 90% market share in just about every component industry. After 30 years, we still have 62% or 56%, somewhere in that range market share, which is unheard of. India is the small car hub of the world. We're going to 7 million cars a year very soon. Every global player has made it a big base, and yet they use TVS as a customer, to the point that now the Koreans use us as an OEM for Korean cars in Korea, and the Japanese are using us for Japanese cars in China. So the quest for leadership has been a great motivator, and it has been through a lot of family pressure that we have actually also maintained it. I remember when I joined the business and they'll ask me, so electronics pandriya ni? What market share unake? Oh, 40% thana, seri pavam. That was the attitude of the company. You're challenged all the time. We're raising a fund, you're raising a rupee fund. So you raise the largest rupee fund? You didn't, is it? Oh, I see. You'll learn, don't worry. So constant challenge to be the leader, right? It's got great plus points. It's obviously got some minus points. A few of us flame out, a few of us do stupid things because of that challenge. But this has actually kept the group growing. Always be trustworthy, manage on a core set of values, be a very systematic manager, and essentially be number one or number two. And really, if you're not number one or number two, you're not worth having. It's a family which actually has made 2 or 3 senior family members slowly retire or quickly retire at some cases because they didn't fall into these 4 blocks. So it's a family where there has been consequence management. You guys know in families, consequence management is perhaps the single toughest job, even more tougher than induction perhaps. Letting in is very tough in families, but letting out, gosh, never happens, right? It never happens. How do you tell your daughter to go and do something else, or your son, or your uncle, or your cousin, or whoever, right? But we've done that, and I think that is because of our values and our need to maintain trust in society. It's a great luck, it's a fantastic strength to have, it's a huge responsibility to carry, right? So this is just all I wanted to say about TVS, and I kind of didn't really, I had a few slides, but I don't think anything much worth talking about really here. The only thing I felt is, this is one last point in terms of managing family businesses. I genuinely feel that in first generation family businesses, right, we should be open to find the succession outcomes in a very, very open-minded way. This is the time when banks have got getting their act together, when debt restructuring is becoming much more transparent. Gone are the days where you could do CDRs when you didn't perform or you had market stress and somehow keep the company always with you. I think one advice that I have for first generation family members, and I practice that quite religiously inside the TVS group, is be very open-minded about succession. It need not be inside the family. It could be some other person who will treat that asset with the same level of respect, love and affection that you have treated with. I have sold several companies in TVS, maybe the first guy to do so, some out of choice, some not out of choice. But every time I sold it out of choice especially, I always would go and spend enormous amount of time with the buyer. I would, in fact, when one of the companies I sold, I insisted on meeting it's a foreign company which bought it. I insisted on having a lunch with the union leader in that country and ask him to talk to me about the values of the business, because nobody knows the leaders, the values of any business better than the union leaders. They understand it completely. For them, that's only home. So think openly about succession is one thing that I think is an important message I just wanted to share. I genuinely believe all the large multi-generation businesses now become more like a PE fund. Manage their portfolio, see value, and that's the only sensible way to do this. Get advice from Metis and from people like Professor Ramachandran in terms of your constitution, your induction process, your performance management process, your exit process. Today, I think those good tools are available from people like Metis, and I'm glad you have them as your partner. But that is for multi-generation businesses who are third generation and more. But first and second generation, I genuinely believe we shouldn't get obsessed with succession. If there's one problem I see, is that problem. And I keep telling my friends who have children and grandchildren, I said, please don't make your children a victim of your aspirations. Don't make them trapped by your ambitions. They may want to be lawyers, doctors, singers, musicians, grow cheese make cheese in Ooty, have a butterfly farm in Kunnur. Let them be. Today, you can eke a reasonable living doing multiple things. So give people that freedom. Don't trap them. I never had a choice. When I went to Michigan, people would ask me, so what are you doing in summer? I said, oh, I'm going to learn Lisp and I'm going to learn Fortran programming. Said, but you're an MBA student. Why are you wasting your time? I said, I'm going back home. It doesn't make a difference. I just want to learn programming, so I want to have fun. So to go from that kind of mindset where you felt you never had a choice to a mindset where my daughter came to me on Saturday and said, I went to career counseling and I hope you won't get upset, but I want to be an IAS officer. So I said, fantastic. My aunt was a minister, so you want to be an IAS officer, so how can you get to be the best ever IAS officer in the world? That's the only thing that matters then. So I think we need to give people, she's in 10th standard, I sincerely hope that she will continue to evaluate her options till she finds what she really should do. But, but I think the point I want to make is we should be open-minded on succession. So you have all joined the family business, but then you have children or you will have children. And in their world of 2050, right, and India, which is the second largest economy in the world, maybe even the largest economy, where people feel so proud, so good about India, why make them run a forge or a casting plant or mine quarries or whatever it is, right? They may just be the best ever Mirdagam player that, the state has produced, and maybe that's who they are. So I just want to leave with that, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I really would prefer just to answer any questions. Any question about the group, values, personal situations.
Gopal, I have a question.
Sure, Ram.
What do you think of the trusteeship or custodianship as a value?
Sure. Yeah, I think in my mind, for us, at TVS, the only time things have really worked is because we always, nobody used that word of stewardship, custodianship or value, as you always tell us, you know, you're always holding the business in trust for the next generation. And you always tell us life is like Patek Philippe watch, right? You simply are keeping it for the next generation. It's not your watch, right? That's always been your message. And in some sense, that value, I don't know how it came to us, but it did come. So we're always, I think, been able to think about the fact that whatever business we have, we really have it as a trustee, not just for the next generation, but for the rest of the stakeholders in the system, whether it's been shareholders, employees, other investors and funds. So I think when you're building a larger business, that's the only thing that matters. I really genuinely believe that. And in some sense, it becomes a compass, because when you're under stress, right, when you're really, really under stress, how you behave can be defined by what is your core principle. And if you see yourself as a custodian for that business, holding it in trust for everybody else, including the banks, including the customers, I think that's the only way it works. What is the quotation again? The first generation builds something. You have that lovely quotation. Right?
First generation creates, second generation builds, and third generation.
Yeah, and then there's something about trusteeship, right? There's one, which family, some French family, or is there a quote?
Yes, I mean, I forgot that specific quote.
Yeah.
But I have another related question is, do you have certain processes or practices or traditions in the family which facilitate creating this kind of a value, preserved and practiced? Because preaching the value is not useful.
None. Absolutely. In fact,
but how do you?
In fact, preaching can be detrimental.
Yeah, that's true. So other instances,
I think
or
at least up to my generation, I would say there are two methods we've used. The first method was basically, you know, in some sense, going back to those examples of working through summer in the shop floor like every other person. So, for example, when you went to the workshop, people worked as an operator, use operators' lockers, ate along with them, worked with them every summer for 3-4 summers. And in some sense, that was a great equalizer. You really respected the hard work that was being put under. My father always told me, even before he died, he said, you know, people used to know me because when they came into the workshop, they would check under the car. I had the biggest feet, and look at my feet and say, "Hey, adan chimada par kaal prasarku," because the mechanic could be on a stretcher, right, under the car repairing it. So that, in some sense, is a very powerful statement, because it's iconically saying hard work is so critical. So that was the first generation, I would say, up to my generation. My age was a cutoff point where you went through apprenticeship as a way to learn. I think that honestly stopped in the mid 80s, and we switched to another plan, which is probably more contemporary, which allowed us to adapt, which is kind of, no person after that has joined the family business unless they've been kind of worked outside, essentially got that famous American MBA, then worked for known Fortune 100 brand for 4-5 years. In some sense, a third party has given a sort of validation stamp saying, yeah, you're good enough for Microsoft, good enough for Oracle, good enough for McKinsey, good enough for BOFA, good enough for Toyota. Then they've come into the business. And that's the model actually which even today we have practiced. So, you know, and I just want to, I'm now going to do what Ram said don't do, which is preach. And I have a lot of friends, many of them are investors in my fund, who run family businesses in this great state of Tamil Nadu. And when I go and visit them, I always take the 18, 20-year-old son stroke daughter aside and say, don't join your father. Don't. Absolutely don't do it. It's the biggest mistake you can do. Go work somewhere else, right? And don't work for anybody who's supplier, customer, friend or father, right? And ideally don't work in that city. So all of us need to discover that space, and that I think is today maybe the only real apprenticeship you can do. You cannot apprentice in your family, right? You remember the Bombay example where they would build flats, 8 floors, 9 floors, and the whole family would live. You know what the principle was? It was always uncle, nephew, uncle, nephew, uncle, nephew, because you never want to live next to your father. You know, it's a very powerful principle. Kitchen was common, but the point was apprenticeship cannot be done by your father stroke mother. It has to be done by a third party. Fortunately, in our case, we're able to find outside companies. But I think that is very important. This induction where you have to meritocratically prove yourself in a third place is very, very critical. And the worst thing you can do is to let your son stroke daughter into the business straight from college. I think you're going to reduce their chance of success by 80%. Or some significant order of magnitude, 70%, 60, not 50%. Because they will never get to be the person they are. They will never get to experience themselves, understand their boundaries, understand their strengths and weaknesses, and have the satisfaction of proving themselves, saying, I did that. And now I'm ready to come. I always think about, the Greek hero. The Greek hero is an important person, right? The Greek hero is always got a great challenge, has to go on a great journey, has to have great victories and great defeats, has to have great loves and great loss of love, and then triumphant come back home with gifts, which then that person has to share, right, with the community. In some sense, we need that time to be a hero or a heroine, as the case may be. And that comes in multiple stages, but the first stage is not in your father's or mother's business. I think it's outside. I think that's something very, very important. And I suspect a lot of you have done that, so I don't think I'm telling you anything new. But I would say, going out is very, very critical. So if you're Archeon and you want to build that next family business, my suggestion to Mr. Ranjit is to make sure that his kids don't join the business first. And they're able to be recruited in a panel of other competitors, in a manner of speaking. Or they move into a proper family trustee role, and then they groom for that also equally. But third party validation is good. I mean, honestly, let's face it, let's assume you're a chartered accountant, right? Let's assume you're certified, you're a member, and you're calling yourself Ranjit, CA, and so forth. Can you audit your own books? Maybe you can, but I don't think anybody's going to believe you, right? Similarly, I think you need the third party certification. I think that's so critical, and the kids who get it, the chance of success goes up 3 to 4 times. And you know what happens often? They may decide also to do something else, which is also great. Because ultimately we want our children to be free, to be successful, to be happy, more than anything else. Yes, Suresh.
Gopal, I have a question. See, I'm just going to reflect basically the thoughts of a few of our clients. Typically, the older generation always has mindset on the younger generation that they always...
Can I get a bottle of water?
They always splurge, and they don't come on time, and they don't understand the value of relationships, and they don't have a track record to hand over the business. So hence they are always apprehensive, having a very fixated mindset, and probably because they know them too well. That comes from the fact of that. And how does this youngster should crack this mindset of fathers and or the parents or the elders? And what do you think they should really do from their point of view? Because they are more confused. They have a lot of ideas they are not able to share. But if they share, it has not had many values at times. And because people always have a mindset on them, because of their own proximity and knowing them too well. So what do you think the youngsters should do to crack this practical issue?
So, I think there's no easy answers. This is a tough problem, and all of us have lived through that problem. But I think, and I have lived through the opposite problem, which also, by the way, is pretty tough. So I think it's both ways it's tough. So fundamentally, if I had to sort of take folk wisdom, which I've seen within the group, tribal knowledge within the family, the first is this extended apprenticeship outside the firm, right? And not the sense of hurry that you have to come, I'm already become 52, 55, I need you, how can you be away? I think somewhere we have to put that in judgment, or get children when we're much younger, one of the two, whichever works, right? Unfortunately, when we're very young, we don't know we're going to be in a family business, so that's the danger. But jokes apart, I think being outside for 4-5 years is very, very critical, and having to prove yourself, because it imbues yourself with a sense of confidence. And you also then learn how to trust people around you, because the biggest issue in family business is you don't trust the professional managers. It's learning to trust them. It took me about 25 years. So I suspect other people hopefully will do it much faster than that. But I think it takes a long time, and that can be compressed by working outside. So I think that part is very critical. Second part is inside the family business, you need a coach. You have to, either it's a very experienced family professional inside the firm. That's what we've used internally. For example, when my niece joined the business, one of the most senior executive directors who's been with us for a long time played that coach and mentor role. And she had scheduled time with him at a correct frequency, so it's not random. It's not like I'm there when you need, whenever I need me. I'm there whenever you need me, plus see me on the following days with this report. So that I think is absolutely a great value. And third, at all, if it's possible, right, the first 4-5 years in the family, if that person can be left far away with if you have the luxury of choice, with not a huge business or a tough business, but a reasonable business where they can show success and convince the other employees and other family members and themselves and their father that look, or their mother, that I'm good. I think that would be the ideal situation. But life is not ideal. So we have to also be realistic that these options don't exist. I remember when I joined the business, it was 83, 84, one of our closest associates was a person who founded Indian Express called Ramnath Goenka. Amazing legend of a man, and we are so fortunate to have known him. So as soon as I landed, within a week I was dispatched to Delhi to see him at the guest house. So he said, look, don't join your brother, first point. Be far away from him. I said, fine Ramnathji, whatever you say. Second is, don't start anything large. Third is, don't start anything too new. Right? Take some business, and that time we had some rubber products business. He said, you take the rubber products business in Bangalore, really far away. 2-3 years, you improve that business and show you can make money. Then you come back. Then you do whatever you want, doesn't really matter. That you and God will decide what to do. I think that, in my mind, that truth has not changed, where you need that personal space, first outside the firm, then inside the firm, and then with a coach. You need these spaces, and only in these spaces you can grow. And that growth gives you a sense of confidence. With that, perhaps you can influence your father and mother. And I think the very important thing is they should retire on time. I think that's equally important. I think, we have to tell them that boss or ma'am, as the case may be, in India we have all the stages. You have brahmachari, you have grahastha, you have vanaprastha. So please, when it's time for you to move. I think honestly that is the toughest one, right? And I see people who have 74-year, 75-year-old, and that's why, a great lesson from the TVS family, it kind of has worked for us somehow magically, is that when my granddad was 55, on that birthday, 55th birthday, which was in April, incidentally, I happened to be there, Tamil New Year's time, he came home that day and said, he called his eldest son and gave him the keys. In those days, giving the keys was a symbolic handing over. And he said, hey, this is the key, savida. Innilende lunch time, dinner time, table business yarum pesakodadu. I never went back to work. He never asked for a report. He never went back. That's it. I don't know how he did it. I could never do it. Right? I'm already past that age now. And I still remember my mother just got married that time to my father, and so she went to Madurai, and they all happened to stay. They stayed with my mom and dad, and not with the others. So, says the next week or so, everybody was very proper. Nobody discussed business and so on. But then, as usual, business came back into the table. Halfway to his food, he got up, took his plate in one hand, and went outside and ate. He said, I don't want to hear business. Now, to me, that's an extreme model. I wouldn't think that it's an emulatable model, honestly. But the idea that he stepped away, because TVS, the business was not built by TVS and given to his sons. It was co-created with his sons. Because when he started the business in 1911, when 1916-18 started to grow, the first two sons were in the business with him. So the ability to then walk away and give space, and certainly in 1950, whatever, when he was 55 years old, I guess it must have been in the late 40s. He just walked off, just disappeared. So I think that's a great model to learn from, and we can emulate some version of it.
Capitalism, socialism in the family business. Would you have experienced something like that in your family? Number one. Number two, just my thought, if you follow these values, what you've shown here, both in the company and the family, and probably something that you said, trying to live your life the right way, little bit under the radar, those kind of values make a big difference in probably avoiding such conflicts. Maybe a more meritorious next gen versus a lesser equal. Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the right answers are. I think meritocracy in my mind is non-negotiable, because if you ask me, if you had to drop every other principle and have only one principle, one of those trick questions, you can only choose one thing, and I would probably pick meritocracy, because meritocracy means doing things that you're good at automatically, and that's what timelessly every parable and fable and every different ethic, every ethnicity in the world has taught us. So I wouldn't even blink, and I think in India meritocracy is like so core to our very existence. But my own sense is those conflicts are going to be there. Yeah. You have to put your values and so on, but people are people. My aunt was a socialist, and she decried everything that her brothers did, right? So it's all part of life. You'll always find somebody's a bit more flashy, but somehow you kind of have to. In my mind, it's all in the doing. You can nudge it along, and people also change, right? What they do in their 20s and 30s, they also need to discover their boundaries. They do some stupid things. That space also is important. If you don't let people do a few stupid things, how will they learn? So I think in a family, we kind of have to let some mistakes happen. I would be very concerned about a family that's not willing to allow mistakes.
Family is equality. The membership is by birth, entitlement is there. There is a socialistic kind of values you follow in the family context. But in the business context, which is competitive, you have to have the merit, you have to earn the right to work there, and that is what. So my point is that if you apply the principles of the family in the business context, the business may thrive, may not thrive. So it is not the right thing to do. You have, as you said, you have very clear norms for entering the business. You encourage meritocracy, and you go by that. But in the family context, it's a different thing. The relationship is unity, love, affection kind of matters.
Yeah, so I think in some sense, to bring it into sort of HR language, if you talk about parity versus equity, right? I think that's the principle. Parity means it's everybody is equal, everybody is the same, but equity is what you earn. So I think internally it has to be equity based, but at the same time it has to be a soft way, right? You can't be cruel to a family member. One of the things I see about my family, and I'm not sure Ram could tell us if it's true for others, is we are like the proverbial frog being boiled in that pan, right? So the temperature is going up 1 degree at a time, and we may get boiled and killed at the end. It's okay for us, but we would hate to be in scalding water. So the short-term pain, families kind of don't like short-term pain, especially because it means a lot of unpleasantness, and it means that, therefore you need mechanisms to deal with those kind of issues which are of the nature of short-term pain. And that's why if you're either it's a small business, then it's your friends, relatives who are not in the business, who act as elders, who do that. If it's a larger business, then it's councils and advisory which do that. But I think you need that system to manage meritocracy, because when you can't just push people out. You have to do it over time, gently. There will be a lot of messaging. It's got to be a super HR process. That's not ordinary HR process, where people kind of get to the sense of it. But you have to have it. Otherwise, you're essentially going to destroy all your stakeholders. You just see the plight of weak kings. And just look back in time of great kings in India. All the great kings had no hesitation in handing succession to unknown people, because they felt there was no merit inside their own children. But it doesn't mean that they killed their own children. It often meant, of course, the other person killed their children after they died, but that's a different story. But I think the key point is, meritocracy in my mind is non-negotiable. You cannot be on a parity basis, because parity is actually wrong. It's not parity. You're actually coming to LCD, lowest common denominator. It's not, and whereas what you want is the highest common factor. First principle is to say every person is the highest meritocracy. Nobody is less or more. It is that they're on different tracks. So is it a managerial track? Is it a public policy track, maybe that person is your best PR member. So when family comes together, there's no better team. So you have to find the right track. And of course, there are some cases where the best track is for them to be, outside the house. But that's where I think the advisory, the family committees, the governance, all of those mechanisms, or in a small business, just a committee of a council of people you trust, including professionals who worked with the family, can be of help. But you need that, I think, and I think it's there in most places. And the instant you become blind to merit, you're pretty much in trouble.
Sir, a few suggestions for an endurable family constitution?
Boss, this is like saying, what is the secret of life? I have no answer to that. So, fundamentally, I think nothing more than hard work, common sense, and a sort of seriousness about doing. But actually, if you ask me, it's like, Professor, it's not about preaching, it's not about writing, it's about practicing. So, you got to practice it. And that's why TVS has survived so long, is because somehow it got practiced. And honestly, we don't have a family constitution. We have nothing in writing. We have structures of governance, but not in terms of who we are, what our values are. But in my own little family of 5, nuclear family of 5 people, we actually have written values, we have life mission goals, we have quarterly, we have 10-year plans, we have a 1-year plan, we have monthly reviews, we have quarterly reviews. So it's, my children call it, they call it the APPA review, annual plan performance appraisal. but essentially, I think to me, that is how you bring this up. If as a family you practice that kind of planning, then, today my children, I started this when the children are 5 or 6. It's horribly difficult to do because attention span is 40 seconds. But right now, when I talk to my daughter, she says, look, my goals for the next 2 years are, I must do this, I must do this, I must do that. It came by practice. She came and told me, she said, I've been made some president of some club. I said, good for you. So what are you going to do? She said, no, I'm very clear. The past performance is 1.5, I will do 6. That comes, I think, from practice. I would say start 5 years, 4 years, goal setting, statement of values. I think statement of values, children do at 8, 9 fantastically well. It just shocks me. And I always hide everything I wrote at 8 or 9 from them, because if they ever see how bad I was, they may not get inspired. So I would say practice. Yeah. Practice it at a very micro family level, at your own children. How old are your children? 12 and 9. So have you started with them? Have you started doing annual goals, statements of values?
Still working on mine.
No. Actually, the other process, when you do that, you'll get yours. It's a process. I would encourage you to sit and do it and say, we must have annual goals, we must have life mission, we must have our values. It's not at all about completeness. It's not at all about completeness. For example, when we first started the exercise, one of my children wrote, I don't believe in God. The other child, independent, wrote, I believe in God. First line. It's okay, but they at least started to express their views. Another one wrote, my grandmother is a Buddhist. No problem. If that's what she thinks, that's fine. But it's just start. I think I would start them at that age is perfect. Perfect age. Start them now. Then the idea of having written constitutions, etc., it can't be imposed on you at 19, 20. It becomes a way of life. Teach them task management skills. Teach them project management skills. Teach them now. And today with this whole appified, cloud-based, whatever world, right? There are so many tools in which you can do all this fun thing. I use a lot of tools. Our family uses a tool called Todoist. So all of us know what our tasks are. And sometimes it's just fun tasks. We want to go out to a great restaurant this Saturday evening. So who's got ideas? Go ask your classmates and tell me where their parents are taking them. So it's all fun. But you can make people practice young. I don't know, Ram, whether this is part of which book, but for me, this has worked really well. And give them all the experiences. Take them to places where Archeon is respected. Take them to a customer's place without, in a very natural way, not in any structured way. And then they themselves come and they come back and say, oh my God, I never realized what my dad's doing. This is what he stands for. Right? That gives them aspiration. So raise their sights. But I think start really, really young. Don't wait for them to finish college and come back and write their goal. I made my daughter write her resume when she was 30 years old, when she was 12. I said, just show me your resume. I said, here are 10 resumes I have got from the internet for you of people who are applying for jobs. Now you tell me what is your resume. You write it for me. It took a lot of upping and downing and why should I do all that. We went through the usual processes. But after about a month or so, one Sunday I got a resume. It was a fantastic resume. I was shocked how smart she was. Much smarter than me for sure. Which is great. It's what every parent wants, right? So I would say start now. That simple answer.